All right. So, welcome everybody to our OLLI program for near death and spiritually transformative experiences. And my name is Catherine, and I'm so happy to be here with all of you. And I'm especially happy because Reverend Dick Dingus is here, and I'll tell you a little bit about him. Dick Dingus is a retired minister in the United Church of Christ, where he served in a pastoral role for 26 years. Following that, he served as a hospice chaplain for 15 years, retiring from that several years ago. Dick Dingus is the vice president of Virginia Beach IANDS, and he has been coordinating the speakers there for over 20 years. He also leads an OBE, out of body experiencers study group on Saturday mornings. And Dick also helps with the programming of Tidewater Light Workers Association. And in addition, Dick continues with meetings 2 evenings a week at his home church model called Strangers No More. People gather for dinner at 6 o'clock, and a Zoom channel is open for 7:30 p.m. where they welcome guests who cannot attend in person. And then after prayer, introduction, and sharing, the group enjoys a speaker or a discussion. And the topics are almost always beyond the standard fare of traditional churches. And as of late, there's been a great interest in Ascension, earth changes, and ET involvement. So I just want to say welcome, Dick. I'm so excited that you're here with us today. And come on in and join us.
Thank you, Catherine. All right, I understand your group is interested in spiritually transformative experiences. That's what I had. And I want to talk about that and the results of it. We go through life gathering pieces of the puzzle. And as we complete it, then we begin to see the whole picture. And that's the way it has been for me. And that's what I'd like to share today. I'm 80 years old, so I've had a number of experiences, but the most important one was my spiritually transformative experience. I always had a sense of peace when I was in nature. I liked to go for walks in the woods when I was a young teenager. I had that right soul connection with God early on. But when I got to high school, I didn't really have the words to understand it or to conceptualize it. So I started searching. I wondered if there was a God, if God knew of me. And I think it was when I was in the 10th grade in my bedroom in West Hollywood, Florida. I looked out the window, I looked up into the night sky, and I asked God to show me a sign, a shooting star. And that would indicate to me that God heard me and God was responding to my requests. And this illustrates probably the greatest truth that I have to share today is that we need to ask first. If we ask, then the universe hears us and the universe responds. The universe heard my request and responded. Not that night, but soon afterwards. I was walking on one of the walkways at MacArthur High School in West Hollywood, Florida, and an upperclassman whom I'd never met before by the name of Russ Becker stopped me. And he said he wanted to talk with me, asked if I wanted to go to heaven. And I said, sure, I do. And he said, all you have to do is invite Jesus to come into your heart. Oh, those were the terms that were used then and probably even still today. Today, I understand it as inviting Christ to come into my consciousness. And that's what makes sense to me. So I said yes. And we went aside into the paddleboard court, and we prayed. And I invited Jesus to come into my life. Russ Becker was part of Youth for Christ that had a chapter at MacArthur High School. We met at least once a week. And often before school, the Youth for Christ bus would come out in front of the school, and people would gather there for a more intensive meeting. I was welcomed into this group, and for the first time in my life, I felt that I was being accepted, respected, and even loved by my peers I had not experienced that before. Here I was in the 10th grade. We'd moved a lot over my lifetime. And the people, the young people that I had met were not mature enough to extend that kind of selfless love to me that I found in Youth for Christ. And it wasn't only my peers at the high school that welcomed me and accepted me, but even one family, the family of Art Totman. And they were part of the Christian Missionary Alliance Church in West Hollywood, Florida. David Hardy was the pastor at the time, and I became part of that church. So I was singing in the choir, I was learning in Sunday school. I felt welcome. It was around this time that Youth for Christ had a rally. They had series of rallies around West Hollywood, and this one was in a Baptist church, and it was in the evening. There was a large sanctuary, and I was seated alone. And Jerry Burleson, who was the head of Youth for Christ in that area, was singing on stage. And the song was My Anchor Holds. And as I was sitting alone, all of a sudden I was filled with a joyful, loving energy. It just elevated me. I just felt filled with happiness, filled with joy. It was something I'd never experienced before. The feeling, I was not related to anybody in particular during that session. I was sitting alone, but I was just filled. It was a life-changing event. The energy lasted for months after that. For example, in school, I almost always had a smile on my face, and I was always inviting people to come to Youth for Christ. I would walk on the walkways in the halls at school, but I felt like I was floating. I had received a Bible when I was for my 12th birthday. I'd requested it of my father, and he gave it to me, but I could never really open it and read it and understand it until then. Then I wanted nothing more than to read the Bible at home, especially the Gospels, stories about Jesus. And they all made sense to me. And it was a thrilling time of my life. As we continued in school, the leaders of Youth for Christ, Art and Russ, were both seniors. I was a junior the next year, and they went off to Nyack Missionary College in Nyack, New York. Well, I missed their fellowship, and I also wanted to go into the ministry. I wanted to share what I had experienced with other people who felt lonely, felt something was missing in their lives. It was so important to me. So I followed them to Nyack Missionary College. I was eventually graduated in 66, but I did not follow into the ministry of the Christian Missionary Alliance at that time. I just wasn't mature enough, and I didn't agree altogether with their very conservative viewpoint. So after that, I got a job as a fourth grade school teacher for a year on an emergency certificate, and I didn't do that well as a teacher. And then I had a job as a social worker in the food stamp program when the food stamp program first came out. It was around 1967, I think it was. And the Vietnam War was building up at that time. I was asked to come and have my physical. I was classified as 1A. They were drafting into the Army and the Marine Corps at that time, and I said I would probably do better and feel safer if I were in the steel hull of a ship. So I joined the Navy and was in the Navy for 4 years, exploring and various things. And it was a good time. I had an opportunity to see life from different perspectives. When I got out of the Navy, I decided to go on to seminary. So I was graduated from Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary in 1977, and that's where I began my ministry in the United Church of Christ. I didn't do that well as a minister of education. I was a youth minister in a church in California. But I worked my way up from that, to interim positions and finally pastoral positions in churches. Our training at Nyack Missionary College and at Gordon Conwell was to take a passage of Scripture and often they follow the lectionary. If you know what that is, it's a calendar, a 3-year calendar that surveys almost all the important scriptures in the Bible. And you could pick any one of several scriptures presented for that Sunday and try to develop it as a sermon. And you'd look at the cultural, linguistic background of it and try to understand it and interpret it to the congregation and suggest ways that the truths would apply to us today. And I did that for almost all of my ministry until I came across the book Life After Life by Raymond Moody. I was serving as the interim minister at a church in La Jolla, California, and I went to a thrift store, and that's where I found that book. And I found that there were certain truths that near-death experiencers taught, shared, that were very much like the Bible. Some people in my congregation were really skeptics, but the near-death experience said, there is a God. There is a spiritual realm. Angels exist. And I thoroughly enjoyed that book. And I found another one like that. It's called Sequel to Life After Life. And in that book, Raymond Moody presents the idea of all knowledge. That was the new concept in that book. Some persons who'd had near-death experiences said that when they were dead but conscious, they had questions. And almost as soon as they formed a question in their mind, the answer came to them. It was like they were connected to universal consciousness. I was fascinated with that. So I tried to incorporate a couple of those concepts in sermons that I taught and gave from the pulpit. Some people were interested, some people were not. That was about all that I knew that was written on near-death experience at that time. It was back in, 1977, I believe. And I continued my work as a pastor. All the time, I focused on passages of Scripture that talked about God's love. Some parts of the Bible didn't make sense to me. I did not see God as vengeful or jealous or punishing or judgmental. I saw God as loving. And that's the peg on which I hung my hat, that God is love, the statement from John the Apostle. About 15 years later, I was serving a church in West Virginia, in Wheeling, West Virginia, St. John's United Church of Christ. And a woman came up to me after church in the coffee hour. Her name was Dorothy Schuler. And she held up the book, Embraced by the Light, by Betty Eady. Well, I did not know that other books had been written about near-death experience in the meantime. I was just too busy as a pastor. Pastors are really busy trying to meet the needs and the wishes of their parishioners. So I read this book, and it was a fascinating restart in doing research about near-death experience. I was so excited about it. I even thought, wow, the church that I was serving was low in energy. They had their own concepts. But I said, wow, what would happen if persons who had near-death experiences came into a church to enliven it and enrich it with the energy that they share and the knowledge that they share? So I started a support group or a discussion group for near-death experiencers. I was on television, even telling people about near-death experience at one newscast at the local TV station. Well, I was really excited about near-death experience and reading all that I could, but my congregation wasn't buying it. This just wasn't part of their agenda. They were stuck pretty much in their beliefs about the Bible, and they weren't interested in changing or moving ahead or learning something new. So they decided to vote me out. That was good for me because it provided more opportunity for me to study about near-death experience and related fields. the local library had a shelf of books about metaphysical topics. One of the first ones I read was about Kirlian photography. I'm sure you've read about this, in which electric current is passed through a person's hand on a photographic plate, and you could see the lines of energy extending from the hands. And that was fascinating. Anyway, I started reading all kinds of books. One of the first ones I really loved was by Dr. George Ritchie. His book, it's called Return to the Future, I believe is the name of it. And I got in touch with the leaders of IANDS groups and just continued my study. Eventually, I found my way to a church in Virginia Beach, where I live now. The church was Lynn Haven Colony Congregational Church. The records of Edgar Casey are here in Virginia Beach. And I thought perhaps this congregation would be somewhat inoculated with metaphysical truths that they could accept what I'd like to share about near-death experience. And they were more open than other congregations. The women in this church even started a Conversations with God study group, the series of books by Neil Donald Walsh. And it was short-lived. And someone else had a group on A Course in Miracles. Well, I became part of that. But I continued my study in near-death experiences in related fields during all this time, until finally that church felt that I wasn't on the same frequency as they were on. They were sort of a standard community church. They wanted to continue just doing what they'd always done, and they were interested in the financial bottom line. Some people probably did not feel enough related to me to continue pledging to the church. And so this was a problem for the business-minded leaders. And so I eventually resigned from that church. It took about 3 or 4 months before I became employed as a hospice chaplain. And this suited me better. People in churches often do not admit having any need because they're satisfied. Their needs are met. They've met God. They're part of the church community, and their beliefs are standard. They're in the box. But I was outside the box for them. However, in hospice, there are some definite needs that people feel, and I knew that I had answers that I could give to them that would comfort them. Wherever I went, and I was a hospice chaplain for 15 years. I carried my guitar with me, and I could sing the traditional hymns of the church, which was comforting to people. And I love the happy hymns because I noticed that people are never happier than when they're singing and laughing. And there are a lot of hymns that are happy, and some songs that are very funny, such as "Lay Your Pistol Down, Babe, Lay Your Pistol Down." That's a good one. And we always had a good time as a hospice chaplain. The two truths that I wanted to share with people is that life in the physical isn't all there is. Life continues after the death of the physical body. People are not aware of this. People need to know about it. And the second truth is loving relationships never end. I remember I visited one family. The husband, he was a husband, father, and grandfather, was dying of cancer. And this was my first meeting with the family. And I wanted to share with them these truths. And so I said, there are a couple of things I'd like to share with you. And I told them about life continues, consciousness continues after the physical. And the patient, the grandfather, he said, yes, I know that. Well, he hadn't shared that with his whole family. I think he'd shared it with his wife, but not his children or grandchildren. And he went on to say that he died once, and he lifted up, and it was like he was in a cloud, and it was peaceful. and he felt very comforted in the cloud, and he wondered about that. And he came back, and I said, well, that's marvelous. Oh, the second truth I want to share is that loving relationships never end. He said, I know about that too. And he told a story. He said he was in his kitchen one night. It was in a warm season of the year. The kitchen door was open, but the screen door was closed. And he looked out the screen door, and his friend, who had died in an accident years when they were in high school, came walking up to the screen door. And he said, what are you doing here? That is, he said this to his friend. And his friend said, well, I asked God if I could come down and see how you're doing. And God said I could. So here I am. And they talked about 5 minutes. And then his friend turned around and walked away. And so the whole family heard this for the first time. It was fascinating. But those are the two truths that I like to share. Well, I continued my work as a hospice chaplain, enjoying and feeling useful and helpful for those 15 years. In the meantime, my wife and I had had accepted care for our 3 grandchildren, and we were taking care of them at home. She died. That left me alone to take care of 3 grandchildren and to work a full-time job. I couldn't do that. I tried, but it was too stressful. And eventually, I was called on the carpet at my company where I worked as a hospice chaplain, and they said, your work isn't sufficient. You have to improve. And so I took off my name tag and my phone. I put them on the table and said, that's okay. I resigned. And I became a full-time caregiver for my grandchildren at home. Well, they're older now. That was about 4 years ago. And at home, well, I resigned with enough income that I don't have to worry about working. I never worked for income. I worked because I love to do the work. I love to relate to the people. And it's nice to have the income, and I don't need to worry about it. But now I'm free to do whatever I want to do. I don't have to worry about working for an income. I don't have to worry about pleasing an employer. The only people I need to please is myself, God, and my girlfriend, probably in that order. And over the years, I have continued my study of metaphysical topics in our group at home, which Catherine mentioned, Strangers No More. We talk about every topic that you can imagine that's of interest. Strangers No More happened, as Catherine mentioned. I was at church, at a metaphysical church where I was a volunteer minister for 18 years. And that was after I resigned from the local United Church of Christ here. And after the church service, everybody got up and they had great energy. Energy went through the roof. They were hugging each other, smiling, laughing, and shaking hands. And I said, that shouldn't be part after the service. That's so important. That should be part of the service. After that, I had a dream. I was digging a hole in my backyard next to the garage, and up next to leaning against the garage, there was a cross. When I knew immediately what this meant, I was to start a church at home. It would be a church that would meet outside in the glories of nature as much as possible. And so I started the church, and eventually it got its name by a suggestion from Barbara Dominic, Strangers No More. And it kept that name. And that's the main point of this church. It's a home church model. Early Christians met in homes. Churches today are not stable institutions. They're losing congregation members. Church buildings still require maintenance. If the congregation is too small to afford the maintenance and they have to sell the building, then what do? They could meet in a home. I've got a model, and it's working. My model is designed for building community. We ask people to wear a name tag. We ask people to either introduce themselves or I introduce them at the beginning of the meeting. not at the beginning. We have dinner at 6 o'clock, but the formal meeting starts with Zoom at 7:30. And that's where we do the introductions because some people join by Zoom and they just haven't had the opportunity to share around the dinner table. And then make sure everybody has a chance to share. Uh, Compare that with the traditional church. Unless the church has small groups, you could sit in the sanctuary in the same pew in the same seat next to somebody for years and not know more about them than their first name. You wouldn't have a chance to build community. You don't have a chance to share, except maybe you could sing the songs, but not share individually. If you have a spiritual gift, you're not going to be able to share that without the approval of the pastor and or the deacons. You could put your offering in the plate, but that's how you could share. So at Strangers No More, we want to honor God's gifts in every person and allow them to share that. And if they can't share it, if they don't share it during the Zoom meeting, they may have shared it at dinner, or they might be the program some Thursday or Tuesday evening to share their spiritual gift. Then we have speakers. Catherine has been a speaker. Right now, our favorite topics are, well, in the past, we've done prayer, meditation, healing, Reiki. We've done near-death experience many times. Many speakers talk about their near-death experience. Recently, Greta Reimold spoke, and she talked about how she died from blood loss after the birth of her baby, Matilda. And she talked about Matilda, who's now 3 years old, said that Matilda met with her mother when her mother was dead. And Matilda encouraged her mother to go back to her body because she would be needed. And Matilda has continued talking with her mother about spiritual things, even though she's only 3 years old. Isn't that fascinating? Anyway, we've had speakers about near-death experience. We've had speakers about extraterrestrials. David Such was one of our speakers. He talked about what he has learned from extraterrestrials in his interviews about the future of the Earth. He recently wrote a book. He just sent it to me. I'm reading this book now. It's called The New World of Love. And I'm up to chapter 4. And I'm fascinated. He's put together everything about transitioning to a new Earth and a golden society and a good culture of Earth where people respect nature, they live in harmony with each other and with nature, and needs are met, and there's abundance. He said this is going to happen. So that's one of the topics we'll be talking about. We talked about Ascension. We talked about Earth changes. We talked about the intervention of extraterrestrials in Strangers No More. Now, these are topics you're not normally going to hear in church. You won't much hear about near-death experience either. They've got their standard agenda. They're pretty much in the box in traditional churches. So I've done something that I feel good about. It's something new. It's something can be sustained. You're not going to have to worry about hiring a building space to meet. You're not going to have to worry about hiring a pastor. Anybody could lead such a group. And you're not going to worry about dwindling funds and going out of business because you're meeting in a home. So the congregation is small, but it's designed to proliferate in small groups wherever people are interested in meeting to do the same thing. Well, I'd like to pause now and see if there's any question before I continue.
Sure. Well, I have a question. I think I was there in the beginning when you started Strangers No More. Was that about 4 years ago?
Yes.
Okay, great.
2022.
All right. It's a great name too, and it's perfect for what you're doing. I love how you bring everyone together to have a meal together, and then you include people that can't be there, right, in your local area to come in on the Zoom platform, so that people are in your living room, and then you also have it up on the big screen so that people can see the Zoom participants, and then you're able to bring speakers in on Zoom. So it doesn't just have to be people from your local area, and that's wonderful. It's all inclusive. And I love all the topics too that you've brought in. It sounds like it's just open to everyone. It's not a Christian, it's not just like, Christian. It's open to everyone's experience of the divine, right? Their own unique experience.
That's right.
Wonderful, wonderful. So thank you for everything you're doing. So does anybody else have any questions for Dick? Comments, questions, insights? All right, I see Wayne.
Dick, being in Virginia Beach, do you have anything to do with the ARE?
Yes. When I first came to Virginia Beach in 1997, I went to the ARE. I knew of it. I was filled with wonder as I entered that building and looked at their programs. And I've spent many weeks in their library studying healing, resuscitation, other things. And now I'm a speaker there. I speak once a month at the ARE. My standard talk is Love and Gratitude, which is based on the findings of Masaru Emoto took photographs of water crystals. So I'm not a member of the ARA, but I am a speaker there.
Wonderful. Masaru Emoto, I don't know how you say it, but that's how I've always said it. Yeah, he did really interesting work with water crystals. And he actually passed away within a couple of days of Dolores Cannon. And if it's all right, I have a little story about him, if it's okay to share. He actually came to me in a dream with Dolores Cannon, and they were smiling at me, and they looked very young and happy. And he was golfing, right? Now, I didn't know why he would come to me in a dream and be golfing, but he hit a ball, and then the dream ended, and the next morning I woke up and I emailed some people on a forum I belong to for QHHT, and I just said I had this dream. Masaru Emoto was golfing, and I don't understand why. Well, somebody sent me an article that he had written about how he got started in his water experiments, where he was golfing one day with a bunch of his friends and colleagues, and his knee was hurting him so bad that he said, "I'm going to have to go home. I'm in a lot of pain." And this lady came up to him and she said, "Here, spray this water on your knee." She said, "It's infused with all beautiful energy of love and unity and healing." And he just kind of rolled his eyes a little, but he did it because he figured, what the heck? It's only water, right? And then his knee felt better, and he was able to continue his golfing for the day. So that really sparked his interest in the water experiments that he started to do. And that's how he got started. So I was really blessed to have that experience with him and Dolores, and then to find out about that, because I had no idea how that started for him. So
Thank you for that story.
yeah.
He named one of the first book I read was The True Power of Water. And as I studied this, I wanted to clarify the concept. Water itself, I don't see that it has power of its own, but rather it receives and retains power that's applied to it. And it passes that power on to other people. So it may have power of its own, but what the experiments indicate that the flasks of water that were labeled love and gratitude or some negative label retained that energy, and that energy organized the structure of the water. And then, of course, we're assuming that it was passed on, and Catherine's story indicates how it was passed on to other people.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. All right. So, did you want to share some more, Dick? We have time.
Yes,
And
I do.
I don't see any hands, so.
I wanted to share that, but at first I wanted to see if there's any more question. If not, then I'd like to continue. Yes, Rabbi.
I just wanted to know what ARE is.
Association for Research and Enlightenment.
Ah, thank you.
Rabbi,
yeah, hi. You may have talked about this already. I came in about 10 minutes late, but I've been doing a lot of work the last few years with people who receive signs from the afterlife, people in the afterlife. Do you do any of that, or are you interested in any of that at all?
The first book I read about that was Bill Guggenheim's book called Hello from Heaven. And often the signs would be the consciousness of a person would come into a bird or an insect, might be a butterfly, a dragonfly, and come into the physical proximity of the person who was grieving. And then they would intuitively understand that their loved one was communicating with them. So that was the sign. And there can be all kinds of signs.
Right.
Mentioned in the book, like you could talk about pennies. Pennies show up where they don't not expected, and all of a sudden they're there. Yeah, I'm interested in all of that. The signs that people are still alive and interested in us. They know of us. They want to communicate with us. I have dreams. They don't always indicate the presence of people, but some of them do, and that's where I get my signs.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. All right. Anybody else?
Well, I have some things that I have formulated as a result of my spiritual search, and I'd like to share those things. They're probably things that you already know, but maybe this will confirm what you add a layer of confirmation to what you already believe. I've always been working on the definition of God. And I've come to believe that God is the conscious, loving energy within all things. And this explains the mysteries of the universe. Everything was created and given life and is being sustained and developed by God, the universal life force. For example, how does a flower grow from a seed into a blossom? What a mystery. But it can be understood if you know that the intelligent, loving life force is within that flower, causing it to grow. Last week, my girlfriend and I went to a fishing pier, and we took a sandwich with us to eat there, and there were some purple grackles. And we would break off a little piece of bread and put it on the deck, and the grackle would come up and get it cautiously. And we had a chance to look at the birds very close up. And they're beautiful. The beautiful purple shade to their purple-green shade to their feathers. And it just reminded me, such a bird has hundreds of individual feathers. No two feathers are alike. And yet somehow all of those feathers fit together in one unit next to each other to provide insulation and waterproofing for that bird. How does that happen? We could never do that. Hundreds of tiny feathers all fit together into one unit. But God did it from the inside out because God's the life force within all things. The second thing I learned about and conceptualized is that the universe is alive and conscious. And this talks about everything in the universe. Even a rock has a consciousness of its own. And you can share that consciousness. You can hug a tree. You can walk barefoot on the ground. You can admire the beauty of a flower. and your presence will be known and acknowledged. One near-death experiencer was out of his body, and he was admiring the beauty of a flower. And the flower, he observed, sent back 2 photons of light. And there you have love and gratitude. Gratitude in response. It's like the sun and the moon. The sun sends out its rays with love, and the moon reflects it back with gratitude. More than that, if you ground yourself on the earth, then your energy will be balanced. You might also get some information if you hug a tree. The next thing I conceptualized is that we all know this. We live in a space-time continuum on Earth. We chose to come here. The purpose of our lives here is to experience being away from the source of which we are all a part. We are all parts. Now, we could also be described as fractals of the source. It's a mathematical term. A fractal is a smaller portion of a whole that retains all the qualities or characteristics of the whole. So God is the almighty, omniscient, all-powerful, and we are fractals of that, only on a smaller scale. And we come here for our own benefit, for our souls to experience, to learn, and to grow. Experience produces is the beginning. And then we learn from our experiences and we grow. In the Edgar Cayce readings about parenting, he advises for parents to allow their children to have the freedom to experience life, because that's where they'll learn and grow. And this happens more on earth than in our spiritual state, because in our spiritual state, we have that all knowledge that I mentioned before from the book Sequel to Life After Life. If you have all knowledge, then you know the consequence and the results of any action that you're going to perform. So there's not much benefit from that, because you're not guessing about anything. But if you go by your intuition, then you have the opportunity to develop character, because you're choosing among uncertainties. We come here not only for ourselves, but also for God. Through us, Creator gets to see itself. I have this vision of God, it's my own imagination or my own concept, of God one time being alone. Pretty lonely, pretty boring to know everything and nothing changes. So what does God do for interest? God creates something outside of itself with whom God can relate. The Edgar Cayce readings indicate have a series on first cause. I was interested. First cause sounds like a magnificent concept. What's that all about? First cause is the reason God created humankind, and the readings indicate God did this for companionship. God was lonely. God created us to be companions. Well, this suggests the question to me, am I a good companion to God? Do my choices make me a good companion? And my choices should. So I should measure everything by that ideal, to be a good companion to God. And God shares company with those who are his companions. Now, there's another interesting concept. And this was shared by one of the persons who had a near-death experience. Her name is Sandy Toronto. And she said that God created or allowed this realm to be created, the finite realm, so that God could continue to exist. God is the infinite. But in order to be infinite, God has to also include the finite, or else God can't exist as the infinite. So God created the finite, and we are the expressions of the finite through which God continues to exist. God exists in and through and as us. And God accumulates our experiences. God even, you might even consider God expanding or evolving by the things that God learns through our experiences. There's a concept that needs to be developed about the evolving God. People think that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That's a verse of scripture from Hebrews. But I don't think God is the same. God continues to learn and expand. And this might explain the differences between the way God is presented in the Old Testament and the New. In the meantime, God learned some things. In the Old Testament, God saw the evil of humankind and said, I don't want this to happen anymore. I'm going to wipe them all out with a flood, except for Noah and his family. They're righteous. And then after the flood, God said, oh, I'm sorry, I did that. I'm not going to do that again. God learned something. So we think of God as I wonder if we could think about God as the evolving God. And eventually, we're going to evolve to the place where God was. But God will have evolved long past that. That's an interesting concept to develop. Sandy Toronto said that there's another dimension that's also expressed by us. She said that by our choices, we affect the evolution of humankind and the expansion of the universe. So if you ever have felt insignificant, think again. Another concept that I developed in my studies, spiritual studies, is that we can expand our consciousness. When we come into this space-time realm, we come with about 30% of our soul. The rest of it remains in the spiritual realm. And we're connected subconsciously. And we call that part of ourselves, that greater part of ourselves, our higher self. If we have a near-death experience, we can open up that channel of intuition to our higher self. And if we follow that, we can develop the growth of our souls. We could do this. Quantum healing hypnosis technique leads us to do that. Under regression, a person may have images come to mind, and they may say, well, that's just my imagination. Well, that's the left brain interfering with the process of the right brain, which connects with the soul. So we typically ask, oh, Mr. Left Brain, would you stand aside, please, and let this process continue so that we can access the higher self through the right brain. And then after the session, you can integrate with the left brain. People with their right brains access that all knowledge, that realm of superconsciousness. It's not just your imagination, it's something that comes from beyond. Now, my evaluation is that sometimes people get off track. They came into life with a purpose. They set challenges to overcome. They had spiritual goals, but then they got involved in the material, and they need a reset. So what happens, baby? They'll have a near-death experience. It may be arranged for them so that they can get back on track. There was a man named Blue Joy, who was one of our speakers at Virginia Beach Friends of VBIANDS many years ago. He was killed in a truck accident. He was the driver. And when he was above his body, he saw a veil, and he went toward the veil. It was like a curtain. And his leg went through the veil and created a hole there. His whole body didn't grow through, but only his leg. And he came back. He pulled his leg back, but the hole remained. He began to know things. He began to experience higher consciousness. My theory is that when a person has a near-death experience, they go through the veil and they come back with higher consciousness, with greater access to universal knowledge. So we can gain higher consciousness and we can accept the things that people from near-death experiences tell us. One of the things they tell us is there's no past and no future. It's all happening now. It's like the eternal moment. Another thing is there's no place other than here. It's no there or away. So it's all happening here and now. You could call it the eternal moment. Now, if you come to this understanding, then it's an easy leap to know that you could be in touch with anybody in the universe anytime, anywhere. It's all one. All you have to do is think. If you want to be in touch with your grandmother, with your grandfather, with extraterrestrials, anybody, you just have to think, because your mind is all connected in oneness in the eternal moment. You can also use the power of your mind to create your reality. As mentioned, each of us is a fractal of the Creator who caused all things to come into being. So by the power of our thoughts, we can create our own future. Belief is a critical factor. If you believe it, then it will happen. If you don't believe it, then it will be impossible. That's another main truth of quantum healing hypnosis technique. And if you remember one concept from today, that's the one to remember. If you believe it, then it will happen. The classic illustration from the Bible is the woman who had the issue of blood. She had it for many years, and she had visited all the doctors. She had expended all her money to find a cure, and they couldn't help her. But Jesus was coming to town, and she said, if only I could touch the hem of his garment, I will be healed. Well, he passed by, and she touched the hem of his garment, and she was healed. Well, he sensed that somebody had touched him, and he surveyed the crowd, and he found the woman, and he said, your faith has made you whole. Now, energy may have gone from him, but her faith is what made that energy apply to herself. What you believe in your mind is what will happen. She believed it, and it happened. You can create your own reality in this space-time dimension. Everything is energy and vibration and frequency. And if you choose to think about things of the spirit, of higher vibration, such as love, joy, and peace, kindness, gentleness, goodness, patience, self-control, those fruits of the Spirit listed in Galatians chapter 5, then you will find your life happy and fulfilled and healthy too. On the other hand, if you allow negative thoughts, anger, resentment, bad experiences to fill your mind, then you'll be creating an unhappy future for yourself, because you'll attract whatever you think about. Your thoughts don't remain in your head. They're energy that extend into the universe. You are an energy being. Some of that energy is contained in a physical body, but other parts of it extend beyond. That's what we see when we see an aura. We see the energy being of another person. Now, if we could hear the universe talk, it would sound like this. I see and hear John. I don't see anybody on Zoom here named John. That's good. The universe says, I see and hear John. He is complaining about his life and blaming others for the way it's turning out. That must feel good for John. I love John. I'll bring about more situations for him to complain about and to blame others so that he will enjoy his life even more. And then the universe turns its head and sees Sarah. Sarah is observing the birds at her feeder. She sits next to the garden where she loves to grow vegetables. She looks up and sees white clouds against the blue sky. She feels the warmth of the sun on her face. Sarah's heart is filled with gratitude. She thanks God for the beauty of creation. The universe smiles and says, Sarah has chosen to fill her heart and mind with everything good. She enjoys the life I gave her. I'm going to give her more of these experiences. I will take away her burdens and create opportunities for her to sit in nature. In fact, I will sit with her because I share her energy. We are here to experience separateness from God. This is an experience but it's only an illusion. It's a dream. When we enter into universal consciousness beyond this realm, it will be like waking from a dream. We will say to ourselves, wow, that was just a dream. It was an illusion. It was only a fraction of a second compared to eternity where we live. While we are on earth, we will think of ourselves as separated from God, but really we're not. We only think that we are. And while we're here, we can make of our lives a good dream or a nightmare. It depends on what we think. None of us have limited consciousness. Some of us have expanded our consciousness. Some of us did it because of a near-death experience. Others may have had an out-of-body experience or have done it through meditation or a spiritually transformative experience that set us on a spiritual search. If you're part of such a group, and I know that Catherine provides 5 groups, wow, then you're in a good place to develop your consciousness. Keep up the good work. In conclusion, the most comprehensive truth that I have learned is that the goal for humankind is for all to share the oneness of love. The daily path is just to connect with God by gratitude, to ask for and follow God's guidance, and to know that we are loved. And that's what I'd like to share this morning. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Any last question?
Wow. Hold on. Let me come in. Here we go. Wow. Thank you so much, Dick. That was so beautiful. You shared so much today, and it was so interesting to hear about your journey and how all of this unfolded for you and to hear what you've done with it, right? You just kept going. You just kept going, right? And I love all of the joy that you brought to the people in the hospice with through the music that you sang with them. That really jumped out at me because joy is one of the highest expressions here, and what a beautiful way to help them at the end of their life. Also, I love everything that you put together. These are all things that you've learned through your journey, and you brought this to your talk. There's just so much that you shared with us that's so beautiful. So does anybody have any questions for Dick or insights or comments, anything you want to share? All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. We have a shy group today. And so yeah, this was really a pleasure to have you here, Dick. And again, I appreciate your share with us so much today.
You're welcome. I'd like everybody to know that they're all in such good care with you, Catherine, because you have such a comprehensive understanding of everything that's going on. And if they stick with you, they'll be coming out just fine.
Oh, thank you, Dick. Thank you for that. And I so appreciate all the work you're doing in the world. And I love how inclusive you are of everybody and how, yeah, you
I
just
just wanted to say thank you, Dick. It was
yeah.
a great talk. I really liked your quantum healing, belief in yourself and believing, because so many people do not do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you. Yeah. And I love how you open your home to people. That's very brave and loving to do, for just total strangers, but you have no fear about it. And I think that's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful example, I think, that you set for others. Yeah.
Now, we filled all our bedrooms here with people who needed a place to live and pay rent. And then other people needed to come. So I built a shed outside. And the intention was to allow a family to live there. But they moved to Utah before they could move into the shed. They were living in the family room. And then my son came to live in the shed. Well, then other people needed to come. And Teresa came, and she's living on the couch in the family room. And then Matthew came, and he was living in the top of the shed, but he found that I bought a tent with the intent to house a family because it's large enough to do that. And he decided he's going to stay in the tent for right now. So we're pretty much full up. We have one more space.
Yeah, and your heart is full, and
Yep.
it's lovely. It's really beautiful. Thank you so much, Dick. Really. And Dick also put together a book called Witnesses of the Beyond, and he kept track of different speakers and people that have shared their stories with him over the years. And some of their stories are in the book, and then other people put their information and their contact information and what they do in the world since they've had their STEs and NDEs. So it's a wonderful book, and I thank you for doing that.
The book is designed for group leaders who need to find speakers. So I was in charge of finding speakers for Virginia Beach Friends of VBIANDS, and I realized other group leaders needed to find speakers, so I just put them all together in a book. And the Kindle version is the best way to get it. It's like $10 on Amazon because you can click on all the hyperlinks and find out all the research and the other presentations of speakers on their podcasts and elsewhere.
Yeah, it was really, really done very well. So thank you so much, Dick.
You're
All
welcome.
right, guys, thank you so much for being here. And this was a wonderful presentation, and I so appreciate all of you. And have a great week, everybody, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day. Bye-bye.